Well, the new flight controller for the He-Wing came yesterday late, and the new props for it should be here Thursday. So I'm going to try to put this back together. Notice the hatch is one piece again. Little yoo-hoo pour. Fix that right up. Unless you know where it's cracked, I don't think you, well, you can see the crack underneath, I guess. But on top, unless you know where it's at, you can't see it. Set that in there for safekeeping. The part of the fuselage right here that was broke. Where? Can you tell me? I know where it is. Where every seam is. But you can't see it any longer. Again, yoo-hoo pour, fix that right up. Yesterday, I ripped the flight controller out of it. And Jiminy Cricket. I labeled all the wires and stuff, but these right here are the ESC wires. They're not going to let me get the new flight controller very far out of this fuselage for soldering up the 3 ESC wires. So that's going to be rather fun. See what else? Oh, the servo's still coming from He-Wing. Don't know if I showed this in any of my videos, but you can see. Get that back out of there. It's in the way. This is the RC receiver. You can see down in there, one of the battery rails right here broke, and the plywood that goes across broke. Got that part coming along with the new tilt servo. But I'm going to go ahead today and solder up the new flight controller. Hopefully start getting on it. Here's what I was talking about, the little part of the battery tray. Plywood broke. So, here's the little flight controller that comes with it, and there is no place to put in a SD card. So there's no data flash log out of this, which bothers me. I like that data flash. This is the ESC control signal for number 3, servo 3. Got a little wire comes up from the controller on the bottom here. And this is where the ESCs and battery were soldered. Overall, good job by them. There were 9 servo inputs in this. I thought there were only 8. When it's all jumbled in there, sometimes you count wrong. So let's get started on flight controller soldering. Okay, I'm not ready to start, but I'm going to anyway. There's like 76, 78 connections to solder on this flight controller because I'm going to put every pin on it. Wish me luck. One of the things I've been doing lately when I solder these pins on, for example, these 9 connections right here on 3 things, is I take a DuPont connector and put across it like that in the center. And then I solder on the 3 ends. That keeps those fairly aligned for me. And now I can go back and solder the rest of the connections. Also, you'll notice right there I've got my 9 volts for camera. And you may notice I'm starting to use a little less solder, which you just need enough. I know that sounds funny, but less is better frequently. Well, there's 72 pins soldered up, plus the 9-volt bridge made there. I seem to be getting soldering skills back. I use much less solder on this one. It looks much better to me too. All right, we got 4 connections to make right down here to connect this flight controller board to the BEC board. Well, there's the 4 wires that connect the flight controller board to the BEC board. I went through hole with these solder connections this time, and I seem to have done a little bit better job than in the past. Keep improving, people. Well, there's the 4 wires that connect the flight controller to the BEC board. I like it. I'm getting a little better with those too. It's just fitting that as I kind of finish up all the bills, that I get better at the end, but it's a bummer that I wasn't better for all the other ones I soldered up. Okay, there's the battery leads soldered on, and I kind of pulled up some solder there. That's where the plus for the E3 ESCs and the minus for the 3 ESCs is going to go. Boy, getting the rest of this done is a little tricky. Okay, I've taped back all my wires, trying to get them out of the way here, except for this one ESC here. This one's going to be easy to solder onto the flight controller board because I've got all sorts of room for it. But the ones down inside the airplane, this one and this one, these two right here are going to be a bit of a bummer. This is a Y connector down here for ailerons, and then the rest of them are for the tilt servo and ESC's control out on the wings. Let me see what I can figure out. This is a different flight controller. I'm just sticking in there temporarily to see how the other one would go in. I think it's going to have to be mounted backwards, just because this is where the ESC wires and the battery wires come out. The main problem is this flight controller really doesn't touch the fuselage. It just touches those 2 plywood rails in there for the battery. So it's not going to be fixed down very well. What can I do about that? Guess I'm going to have to cut those battery rails. I've got new ones coming because of this broken plate. The 2 rails down the side and then the plate across all comes as one part. So I think I'm going to take those rails out and see what I have after that. Wow, those rails came out so very easy. They're not glued in there well at all. Boy. Well, I guess they're not a problem until you crash. When you crash, you're on the ground, so in the air, they're not a problem. There's still a foam on each side, so boy, how can you mount this in there easily and well? I think Bonafide Pilot 3D printed himself a new part for mounting his flight controller. I'll probably have to go look at his video. Okay, that's about how I want it. Boy, it's just not going to. Maybe I should cut out some of that foam on the right and left and try to make the whole thing flat. Yeah, I think that's my best and smartest bet. There's just too much of a gap underneath it without doing that. Well, it doesn't show well in the camera, but from right here back, both the little race places on each side is cut back. That hopefully will let the whole, whoops, yeah. That hopefully will let the whole flight controller touch. So I can use some double-sided tape on it. Need to do a little bit more in front, just about 1/4 of an inch more forward. All right, I had to cut out a little more foam forward, but I got it. I don't know if you can see real good, but the flight controller is pretty much flat across the bottom right there. That'll work. And it's basically back to the back. And I am going to put the flight controller in 180 degrees out. It should be facing that way, but it should be facing this way, but it's actually facing that way. I think you can see the arrow on it right there. But because of the battery lead and the ESCs coming off of this, I'm going to face it this way rather than have those come over the top. And then I'll be putting, this will be for all the camera and stuff, and then the servos and stuff will be down this side. I think that's going to work well. Now, to get those, only 2 of the ESCs is going to be a pain in the posterior to solder up. When I say a pain in the posterior, I'm worried about melting some of the foam on each side. All right. Went ahead and put my double-sided 3M tape on the bottom of it. I'm going to use to stick this down. Might not should have done that because there's going to be some heat added in this area. We'll see what happens when I solder the ESCs here. And then I also have to solder the capacitor in there too. I'll put that on the very top. All right, let's see what we can do here. Wow, just before I started soldering, I noticed there's 2 screws right here in the top of these plates that go in each side, and they can come out. Now I have plenty of room to solder up my ESC, and this doesn't even have to be taken apart because this will give me enough lengths here. How about that? So there's the 2 little boards out. So it's going to be easy to solder them up. I marked this one as the left side so I wouldn't get them confused. Boy, sometimes it's a little easier. And boy, does that piss me off. I've got a 4,000 milliamp hour lithium ion battery charging over there to go fly the 5-inch. Perhaps not today. Dang it. Well, there it is. It's not pretty. The solder joints are good, and it's not a cold solder joint, but it's all got all sorts of humps and stuff in it. Such be life. Close it up. Look at what this did for me when I took those things out of the fuselage. Now I have all sorts of space to work in there. Put this back in. Wonderful. Great big rats. I mean, big hairy rats. I taped the damn flight controller down, and I forgot to put a SD card in it, and I forgot to put the USB dongle on the side of it. Rats. Then I had to pull the flight controller back up and put another piece of tape on it because it didn't stick down as well the second time after being pulled up one time. I mean, oh God, I knew this was not going to be fun. Houston, we have a problem. Evidently, see, this connector is labeled 3, so that would be throttle. But there's information coming up from right here to the board. So evidently this controls the throttle on the, I guess it's all three motors. And there's some information coming up through this that is more than power to this. It has to do with the motors. Because I do have, well, no, the control for this ESC is connected to 7. So what's going on here is this controller's throttle is a little specialized. I'm going to have to drop back and punt here and figure out how to wire this up a little differently than the way this one was wired up to make this work as a quad plane. Wow. So there are some special functions in this. Should have known it. There's 6 wires in there instead of just ground and voltage to bring up power for this. So, well, I've got time. It's going to take a while, probably a couple of weeks for the replacement servo to get here. So I'm going to have to completely rewire this thing, which, yeah, I'll get it. I'm going to close it down right here for today and drop back and punt again. Thank you.